Welcome to my North Carolina studio. I'm in Durham, and it's here that I make a mess with mixed media and write a line or two. I'm delighted to be with you. I wish we could gather in person. And today we will be talking about writing process, practice, and rituals. And just two things before we begin. And one is to make sure you have your writing instrument, pen and paper. Certainly you can use a recycled envelope with its canceled stamp on it. I've used that many times, and grocery receipts will work as well. I would avoid using an eyeliner or the crayons that they pass out at some restaurants. But anyway, have your equipment ready, your book and your journal and a place to write. Second, gather those things that are meaningful to you. And as I wiggle in my chair, but gather, just a few things. Did I gather a few things? No, I gathered, half the house. But things that inspire you, that make you want to discipline yourself to write, to develop a practice which you can manage. And I gathered a few things that I want to share with you. The first is this necklace that was my mother's mother, my grandmother's. It's a locket, and it reminds me not only of my grandmother, but of other grandmothers and mothers who didn't have the opportunity to live the lives they could have or would have lived if not for the imposition of culture. And my grandmother's life revolved around her gaillardia, her ringer washer, and her bouts with mental illness. In addition to, so I write for my grandmother, Bessie. Anyway, but I also have a few other things, and they represent this. This is one that's crazy. This is from Greece. It was my mother's, and it is a rooster, and it reminds me to arise, wake up, and get at it. No excuses. And the last thing, I use several things, but I have these weights. They are weights, right? They are not Italian alabaster fruit. Actually, they did come from my mother's fruit bowl. And I had identified this wrongly. This is an apple, and these are cherries, but I have an assortment, and I use them to hold down the flower petals that I'm pressing, that I hope to use in one of my works on my journal. So let these things talk to you and inspire you. This takes me to Italy, where I spent 3 years as a young adult, older teenager. So equip yourself with your writing instrument, with your paper, and with something that inspires you to go forward. All right? So in our presentation today on writing process, practice, and ritual, you'll be hearing from some of the luminaries of American poetry and prose. I will include clips from Lucille Clifton, from Major Jackson, from Anne Lamott, from Kim Adonizio, from Kay Ryan, from William Bradford, from Mary Oliver, and there's one more, and that is Joy Harjo. I think I said that, but anyway. And I want you to know that, as you know well, that you had to go through a great miscellany of information on writing practice and process to distill or to curate just a little short alphabet of words and phrases and people who speak those words and phrases that hopefully will resonate with you. So come along with me as we now take a look at the alphabet. So we're going to take a look at the alphabet. We're going to start with A, and I'm going to do them out of order. I'm going to start with attention, and I'm going to share with you a few words by Mary Oliver. Her poem is called Living a Life. It's 3 lines. Pay attention. Be astonished and tell about it. Paying attention is one of the key gifts of a poet, and something that is part of our writing poetic practice. Other A's are ask, aesthetic, and there are so many, but ask. Ask your characters, ask your poem, ask what it wants to be, where it wants to take you, where it wants to go. Sit quietly with that, and you will find there are poets who talk about asking what you're writing for the answers that you're seeking. Let's look at the B's. Oh, aesthetic is important as well, because aesthetic looks at place, the things with which you surround yourself and what you need. You know, some of us can write in a coffee shop, and others of us have to have a very still, serene, simple surroundings. So consider the aesthetic of your writing, where you are, who you're with, your surroundings, and what actually is the perfect fit for you. One of the B's that I love is best comes from Anne Lamott, the writer, and I put under B's, be quiet. And this is her quote. You have it in your handout on page 2. The best way to get quiet, and this is B, not Q, but you can put it there too. The best way to get quiet, other than the combination of extensive therapy, Prozac, and a lobotomy, is to notice KFKD, K-fucked radio. Think about that, KFKD. It's on every single morning or every night, whenever you choose to write. And as she says, even when she sits down at her desk. So I sit for a moment and then say a small prayer. Please help me get out of the way so I can write what wants to be written. Sometimes ritual quiets the racket. Try it. Any number of things may work for you. An altar, for instance, or votive candles, sage smudges, small animal sacrifices. She's kidding, guys, especially now that the Supreme Court has legalized them. Anyway, she's quite a wit, and she's often ironic. That's Anne Lamott from her book, Bird by Bird. I'm reading to you, and it says, may morning be astir with the harvest of night, your mind quickening to the eros of a new question, your eyes seduced by some unintended glimpse that cut right through the surface to a source. May this be a morning of innocent beginning, when the gift within you slips clear of the sticky web of the personal, with its hurt and its hauntings and fixed fortressed corners. A morning when you become a pure vessel for what wants to ascend from silence. May your imagination know the grace of perfect danger to reach beyond, and the wheel of repetition deep into the call of all the unfinished and unsolved, until the veil of the unknown yields and something original begins to stir toward your senses and grow stronger in your heart, in order to come to birth in a clean line of form that claims from time a rhythm not yet heard, that calls space to a different shape. Maybe it be its own force field, and may it be its own force field, and dwell uniquely between the heart and the light, to surprise the hungry eye by how deftly it fits across the secret loss. And that is John Donahue's poem. I hope you're following along with me on your handout, and that you either make time now or later to go and listen to the audio or video clips that I have embedded here. I want to go on to our C's, D's, and E's, and a little more if we can in this next segment. I want to talk about C. And I loved one thing about C, and there are several words, but one that stays with me is a quote from Jack London. And if you haven't read Jack London since your teenage years, I suggest you revisit him. And I just have had he's a treasure, and although flawed, and I really enjoyed learning about him again. His word is C for club, and he said not to wait for inspiration, but to run after it with a club. And I thought that you would think that's very clever. The other thing is, and this is a different use of the word, but it is curatage. But yes, that's the word that we used with the D&Cs. But you know what? We can apply that word to our writing. Or rather to the life that surrounds our writing. And sometimes it's important to, no question, it's always important to trim those things on your plate that are not necessary. The shoulds, the shoulds, the oughts, the musts. And to set those boundaries that protect you, your mind, your heart, and bring about your bliss. And by the way, bliss is a word, and a quote reminds me of Frederick Buechner, who said that your bliss is where the world's great need meets your great goal or yearning. So remember that carry a club, curatage, and seek your bliss. Okay? D's. Hey, look, do daily. And if you can't do daily, read Anne Lamott, Bird by Bird. If you haven't read that in a while even, read it again. And dare to make a dot. That was a D word. And in another video, I talk about finding a children's book about making a dot. And then another, the same author, who also wrote a book about a journal for us as writers and artists about start with a dot. And I'll show you those again later. E's and F's. I really believe that we're all divinely equipped, and I believe that you are equipped, that there is a well within you, and that you can access that. I have a great quote that I wanted to share with you from a French writer, and I will track that down and share that with you. But there's no question, right, that if you sit still and allow and dig deep enough, you'll be able to access that well of virtually everything that you want to know and get pointed in the right direction. And for F's, I put forge, ahead, frolic. Remember to take time to play. And I don't allow myself that very much, but I do get out the fibers and the cords and the ephemera and the paper, and I do put it together, and it makes a mess, but it also comforts me and calms me and fixes my attention for that brief time that I'm able to do that. Another F is, I think, focus, but again, where the world's deep gladness and the world's deep need meet. That is your bliss. Should be your focus. G for goals, but I loved grit. There is a Finnish saying, actually a collection. It's called Sisu, S-I-S-U. And within that Sisu, and it's not an acronym, but it's a group of characteristics that help Finnish people, or have guided Finnish people for generations, and it gives you the impetus to keep on keeping on, and the word is grit. Remember that movie, True Grit? But grit, I ascribe to that. If you fall down, get up. You will fall down every day, so keep getting up and go back to your practice. Start with a dot, right? It's within. And for H, habits. Establish, smash. I say this later, but I'll just say it now. sometimes the word I give you, the synonym that I give you, the antonym will work better for you. For example, an example of that would be around you when you are wherever it is, in whatever environment you find yourself. If you seek peace, then maybe some of us work in the cacophony of noise and comfort of a coffee shop. But anyway, just remember to take a look at the opposites of some of these words on your handout. And then we'll go to one more, and we'll go to another group of alphabets. Imitate. There's no question, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And I often find that imitating a style, a form, the heart of a particular poem that spoke to you is a way to move your writing, whether it's prose or poetry, forward. It gets you, imitation of a theme or of a story, or sharing your own story. But then there will be those among you who are well aware of the figures of speech, but the parts of speech in the English language, and imitating literally down to a verb, substituting a verb for a verb, a noun for a noun, an adjective, if they are there, for an adjective. And I have found that to be very helpful in creating a number of poems and start simply. Start with a short poem that it doesn't have a lot of effusive adverbs and adjectives, but start with a poem and begin to write your own in your own voice, but imitate the syntax and the particular parts of speech that are there for you. I'll talk to you more about that if you'd like to know. And the last one for the J's is, listen, if you don't know who Major Jackson is, you're missing something. And right now he's got a segment on the National Public Radio, but I met him in New Jersey at a wonderful poets conference there, and suggest that if J for Jackson is all you get out of this, go for that. And the other word was juggle. Honey, I know we juggle. We as women juggle all the time, but put your priorities at the top of that juggle, right? Juggle knowing the order before you go in. Okay, we'll go on. As we continue with the alphabet, let's take a look at the letter K. I think of the poet laureate Jackie Shelton Green, who says, "What you keep keeps you." And yeah, let's look at the broader point of this. In your environment, in your routines, in your rituals, maybe it keeps you from being all that you want to be, keeps you from being the poet or the writer. What you keep keeps you, yes, and it also brings to the forefront why you're doing what you do. This locket, my grandmother's, reminds me that Bessie could not sing her song, so I will sing it for her. So what you keep keeps you, and it keeps you from and keeps you for. So consider those two words and the adverb that follows each of them. And the word L, listen. So much on the word listen, and I have a video clip that is the link is in your handout that Teresa Green has given you. It's not available anymore, so I'll go back to my presentation here and see if I can't read it to you. Anyway, it is, let me increase the size of the screen. It's on listening, and this is William Stafford's poem. It's so beautiful, and it's about he writes about his father's ability to listen, and a gift I think he passed on to his children. But it says, "My father could hear a little animal step, or a moth in the dark against a screen, and every far sound called the listening out into places where the rest of us had never been. But look at William Stafford's poem, and yes, I have the whole thing printed in your handout, and there will be lines there that shimmer for you. And by the way, when you're stuck, and I'm just going to stick this in again, when you're stuck, read a poem, read somebody, and find a line that speaks to you and respond to that in your writing. And you'd be amazed on your morning pages, which is a discipline and a practice I espouse, that you will find direction on that, okay? And our next letter is make. And you know, make a dot, make a mark, make a serif on your paper. Start there. Start small, you know, and I know you know that saying about the every destination, the journey to a very long destination begins with a single step. Remember that, and listen. Set limits. Oh, setting limits on what you can do, how you can take control of your time, cutting out the things that impede. Only you can do this, you know. Only you are the one that can set limits, set boundaries, and cut away the things that impede you in your daily writing practice. Oh, we did M, and I did it out of order. But I loved what Sharon Olds said, and on no's. And so N for no. And she said she did not use a notebook. And so remember, what works for some, and I'm a notebooker, right, or scrap of paper person, or on the back of a receipt, or on a table napkin in a restaurant. I am habitual in using whatever paper I find. But Sharon Olds did not use a journal or a notebook. So no, and no, set boundaries. Again, no, darling, I love you, but I cannot go to the meeting of the guild. I really need to finish this poem. So practice saying no in the, you know, what is it, a sweet word turneth away wrath. But you know, give it a try. I said when I was 40 that I would practice saying no. Well, I'm now 76, and I haven't gotten it right yet, but I do it. And sometimes it leaves me lonely, but I believe that saying no is a very good writing process, practice, discipline, okay? As we continue with our alphabet for this presentation on writing process, practice, and ritual, I may have done this before, but there's never too much of Major Jackson. And the alphabet letter is O, and the word is order. And yes, there are other words that I put in your handout, but let's just take a look at what Major Jackson writes or says in an interview on order. And by the way, if you haven't listened to Major Jackson's podcast on National Public Radio, The Slowdown, you're missing something. And I think I said this before, but I met him first at the Geraldine R. Dodge Poetry Conference in New Jersey and Newark, New Jersey this last year, September 2023, and I was awestruck by his ability to communicate to a multicultural, many-aged audience. So here's what he says. He says, to no one's surprise, like any writer, I have books, journals, and papers everywhere. 5 large bookshelves to the left of my desk. Across the room is a Paul Cobb glass case. Then he says, I long for order when I'm writing, and will go through this ritual of organizing everything before I leap headlong into the work of writing. I've connected you to, given you a link that connects you to this interview. It's there are many, many excellent pieces where he shared his tips on writing, and as a university professor, he does a fine job. Anyway, another thing I think I've said before too is looking at the opposite of some of the words that I've stressed. That even though that I've given you a word and there are synonyms, but also look at the antonyms. Sometimes the antonym can be telling for your writing practice as well. So, but P, the letter P for pay attention. There's no question that paying attention is noticing is the most important thing you can do other than putting down a dot or a mark. And going back to Mary Oliver's very, very short 3-line poem, and I'll take you back to that, and she says, living a life, pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. And that was at the very beginning of your handout. So pay attention, should be among your words for your writing process and practice. And Q, I came up with query, right? And I think we gave the word ask, and asking the questions of your poem. What do you want to be? Where are we going? Where are you taking me? And of your characters. Another letter that is my favorite, in fact, the thing that we should be doing most of all as writers, as poets, as creatives, and that's reading everything we can get our hands on, particularly within the niche that we're studying. But it's so good to read broadly. But I have written down in your handout Kim Adonizio, Ordinary Genius, A Guide for the Poet Within, and here's a quote from Kim. Maybe you're one of those people who writes poems but rarely reads them. Let me put this as delicately as I can. If you don't read, your writing is going to suck. Okay, you've heard it from another poet. Read. Okay? And then in the R's, of course, I have rituals and routines, and of course we can talk about ruts. But what are your ruts and how do you get out of them? Look at the two video clips I've given you on Kim Adonizio, who shares more words on her writing and its meaning. And then another R, and I think I may stop after the R's and see take a look at what I've videoed here. But R, remember, and don't forget Joy Harjo. Don't forget reading her books. But she says, and I quote her, "You are a story fed by the generations. You're a story fed by the generations. You carry songs, grief, triumph, thankfulness, and joy. Feel their power as they ascend within you as you walk, run swiftly, even fly to infinite possibilities. Let go of that which burdens you. Catching the Light, a lyrical meditation on writing poetry by Joy Harjo." Add that to your library. Your favorite bookseller, local bookseller, will be thrilled, but you can also find that as a used copy. Anyway, I have another book I found on writing rituals is helpful. I've given you a link. It's worth a listen. I don't like the AI voice in it, but it is a book, and you might add that to your collection. Okay, we're going to break for now, and we'll get right back with the letter S, I think. Let's pick up here with the letter R for Kay Ryan, and continuing with the word ritual. But Kay Ryan is one of my favorite poets, and I was enamored of her book, Say, Uncle, and met her at the Folger Shakespeare Museum in Folger Shakespeare Library in Washington, D.C. some years ago at a very difficult time in my life when my friends had been killed in a automobile accident by a drunken driver. Anyway, don't you know you get what you need at the when you need it. And her poems in the collection of Say Uncle really gave me the chutzpah, the grit I needed to barrel through and not succumb to uh, inertia, depression. So, Say Uncle, I heartily recommend wherever you are in life, and I found them very meaningful to me. Also, in your handout, in addition to the link to Say Uncle, is a link to I think that's where it. No, no, there it is. It's a little short link to Kay Ryan's little video, which shows her range of emotion. It does not talk about her ritual, but it's very short, and she has a comment on her writing practice. So I thought you'd be interested in that. And going on to another S. Look, this is another basic, right? Begin showing up with orthotics, showing up with hearing aids, showing up. A beautiful young woman in my chart shows up with her cane, which lets you know that she has a visual disability. Young woman, but she's definitely an extraordinary young pastor in training at Duke Theological Seminary in Durham, North Carolina. So show up. Don't wait for an invitation. And when you can't show up, I have a little note here to you. Sing, strum, right? And I think of making a joyful noise, but even making a groan. So showing up. You don't have to be always equipped, but I believe, like Paul Valéry wrote, the French writer, there is in you what is beyond you. And again, I found that in a 1997 book by Dorian Lowe and Kim Adonizio, which is called The Poet's Companion. So, surprise, it was really a wonderful find for me. Okay, so after showing up, we're going to read in your handout, there is a poem that's by Wendell Berry, and it's taken from his book on Standing by Words, and I put an image of it in your handout, but you'll have to look at what the title is. It could be just words. And he writes, Wendell Berry, it may be that when we no longer know what to do, we have come to our real work. And when we no longer know which way to go, we have begun our real journey. The mind that is not baffled is not employed. The impeded stream is the one that sings. That's worth contemplating. That's worth meditating. And maybe you'll be able to have that image juxtaposed next to my image if you've seen too much of me in this. Okay, and going on, we have a few other words that I'd like to share, and then we'll conclude. And the one is very important, and really probably more important than anything else. And, well, one of the most important. Reading is certainly fundamental. Reading is more than that. It is an essential for every poet or writer, as is showing up. And this one is a spiritual practice under the S's, and it's again by Major Jackson. I've included a short video where he talks about writing a spiritual practice, whether you are a secular person or whether you come from a particular faith tradition. But definitely, there is poetry is indeed a spiritual practice and an investment of your soul, your spirit. And I hope you'll enjoy reading that, listening to that little bit there that's taped. I want to tell you too, there's a chart in here of the visual masters, creative routines of visual masters, and it may make you feel that you're just not adequate. But remember KFKD radio. Anyway, it's a link to a creative overview of some of the great musical and written on writers, and it shows you how much time they played, ate, worked, spent in writing and working. And what I want to remind you is I think most of them had servants. So thank you very much, but do take a look at that. It's a lot of fun. And don't, you know, it's just good to have a frame of reference, but you're an individual and will find your own way. Okay, let's take a look at you, right? Underline what shimmers. V, your voice is essential. Your voice needs to be heard. Go back to Joy Harjo, right? That you are precious, and that, and go back to Anne Lamott. Don't listen to the negative voice. Turn off KFKD radio. She says it's with her every day. Listen, it loves to whisper to me. Sometimes it loves to beat me on the head, right? Anyway, but I have stopped listening to that. Actually, I tell my friends and family when they hear that negative voice, flush, flush. Keep doing it. You know, some of you will say, well, I put it on the altar. Well, yes, and then we take it off, put it back on and leave it there. W. Hey, look, I have loved being a part of the Abbey of the Arts. That's Dr. Christine Vaultner's painter, poet. And she founded the Abbey of the Arts, and I wandered in it over the last decade, and I've enjoyed it. And one of the words that stayed with me that has shimmered, and I picked that up from her, was peregrinatio. And that's, I think, something the monks used to do without oars, where they just went and drifted. And I like to think that we can do that in our spiritual practice of poetry and writing, that we can do that, as Wendell Berry said, when we don't know where to go. Maybe it's time for peregrinatio, to see where the current takes you. And again, I put that poem in here by Wendell Berry. You'll see that in your handout. And it's really important to let the current take you past where you don't know where you're going. You know, I forgot to put this in, but you know, I heard years ago about the wolf on your shoulder. You know, that's a negative voice, KFKD. Don't feed it. Some of us not only feed it, we let it come in and perch. And, you know, that's boundaries again. Anyway, believe it or not, I have an X, and that is for xenial, and that is having good relationships. The Y is in you, as in you can do it. It's within you, and you know it. And I, again, take you back to Joy Harjo again, and she says, you are a story fed by the generations. You carry songs, griefs, triumphs, thankfulness, and joy. Feel their power as they ascend within you, as you walk, run swiftly, even fly to infinite possibilities. Let go of that which burdens you. And yes, I've said that twice, but some things bear repeating. Z, by the way, is zwegma. I'd never heard of it, but I put it in here. A literary device linking two thoughts together with one word. Only one need make sense, and you know what these are. You're familiar, as I was. Exodus 20, verse 18, the people saw the thunder and the flashes of lightning and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking. Anyway, I've left a note in the handout that I would love to hear from you. If I would love your comments. I will take your criticisms as well, because you know I may have other things to write and present in the future, and I certainly would appreciate making this even better. I want to thank you for your time and attention. I thank all the people whose work I have visited and the links that I have borrowed and embedded into this video, and I thank the organization for your help, Teresa Green and her associates, and Jake for his help in editing, and to your writing success, okay? Hello again, and I just wanted to make sure that I let you know the lovely books that I found, and I actually either had given them away years ago, or I had to order them anew. But by the way, used booksellers are wonderful things. So here are the ones that were very important to me during the production of this video on writing ritual process and whatever the last word is that I can't remember. Anyway, start with the dot, and this is the journal version a friend of mine told me about. So if you can't make a mark, can't take a stitch, you can start with a dot. Just do it. This is The Poet's Companion, and this is by Kim Adonizio and Dorian Lowe, and unbelievably, it was written in 1997. You know, and I think of them as in their 40s, and they're not. But this is the one that had the wonderful quote that I have actually put a bookmark in the quote, and it says, "There is in you what is beyond you," and that's French writer Paul Valéry. And I'm telling you, you can find some treasures in The Poet's Companion, particularly if you're starting out. But no matter where you are, remember that teaching is repeating, and it's always valuable to go back over it again. This is Ordinary Genius again, Kim Adonizio, and lots of really, really special things in her book. This is where I have been recently, okay, only for a short time, going for inspiration when I actually could find nothing in my mind. And that was after a recent ear surgery. What a thrill. Anyway, but look, you see the dog-eared pages? I write in everything, and quite a spiritual poet, although so just find a line that speaks to you, as I did many mornings when nothing was in my head after, anesthesia. And then the one that I should have, well, the two that I need to show you. And this is the one by our poet laureate, Jo Harjo. And she has some wonderful lines, wonderful advice. And yes, she does speak to Indigenous artists, writers, and creatives, but her words will resonate with you as they did with me. And the name of this book is Catching the Light, and I got a brand new book used. And then The Dot, which is the children's book version by the author Peter Reynolds, and this came before the journal. And so, listen. Start with a dot. You can do that. Or as I say in another video I didn't send, start with a part of a serif. That will work as well. And the last one, and there were so many others, but this came yesterday, so much too late to read again before I tape this video. But I did want to share these books with you for my class on writing process and rituals. Okay? Thank you.